What's something that you've learned about yourself since leaving prison that surprised you?
Since leaving prison, what has surprised me about myself is that I'm strong, that I'm empathetic, that I'm kind, and that you don't have to be tough, too tough on yourself. You can make mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to love. You're allowed to cry. And you're allowed to be vulnerable.
That was perfect.
Dope. Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Life After Prison with Zak and Jules. In today's episode, we are joined by a true pioneer of the UK music scene. From growing up in Brixton and navigating the challenges of street life to becoming one of the founding figures in jungle and drum and bass, his journey is nothing short of legendary. But behind the decks and iconic tracks is a powerful story of redemption, including time spent in prison, a battle with mental health, and a mission to break the stigma around it. Jumpin Jack Frost, welcome to the Life After Prison camp.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you.
We should be doing a...
Come on.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good,
man.
good.
You know?
Good.
I'm grateful every day.
That. Love that. Always got to be grateful. Innit?
Yeah.
Grateful every day.
Yeah. So let's start with music, yeah?
Yeah.
For those who don't know you and haven't come across you before, how would you describe your sound and like the movement you're a part of?
I'm part of the jungle drum and bass movement. Started off as a funk DJ.
Okay, funk, yeah.
Rare groove funk. I was with Jazzy B the other day, who's someone I spent a lot of time with.
Saw that,
and it kind of brought me through in the business. So I've got a long history in music, come from funk, hardcore, rave, all the way up to now jungle drum and bass. So I've been in the business quite a long time.
Jazzy B, that's soul to soul and
yeah,
there. That's
yeah,
serious.
soul to soul. Like I was with him on Sunday. You know what I mean? Spent the day with him and his brother.
That's dope.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's dope. So then when did your musical journey begin?
You know what? I started playing music when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I started off playing music at family parties and stuff, just getting all
What,
my
DJing?
Well, there was only one turntable then. And what I used to do, you know, you had the family parties.
Yeah.
And I remember like my aunts and that they used to all be in the kitchen. You know what I mean? And I used to just think, me and my cousin used to make a little plan, how can we get them out of the kitchen so we can steal all the patties? So I used to think, all right then, what record is going to get all these lot out of the kitchen and dancing?
All right.
And I used to play a record called Sugar Boom Boom by Lord Kitchener.
Yeah.
A Calypso record.
Yeah.
And whenever I put that on, everyone would run out of the kitchen and start dancing. Then we go and raid the kitchen and get the patties.
That is so
and I think
smart,
that's the first time I
7 years
thought, yeah, this is how you get a response from people. And it kind of went from there.
Oh,
that's
smart.
a big tune, by the way.
Give me a
What? Serious?
Sugar
Boom,
Boom.
Sugar what?
Boom. Come on, bro.
What? That's a serious tune. Take us through the early days of you started in music. What was that like?
Well,
what got you hooked? What was it?
I grew up in a family of music. My uncles and my dad and my mum, everyone was into music. My uncles, especially my Uncle Stan and my Uncle Butch, collected records. So I was, from an early age, I was exposed to stuff like Parliament, Miles Davis, who's a massive
That's
influence
serious.
on me. Miles Davis is one of my heroes. James Brown, and I just watched and took things in and just watched and, do you know what I mean? And it just, you know, you become a product of your environment in that respect, you know what I mean? So I was always around music, so it was just a natural kind of thing for me to be curious and want to know more. And then I got into sound systems, do you know what I mean? I used to hang around with like Frontline International and Sir Cox and I used to go to Saxon, do you know what I mean? And just check out that. So you know what I mean? It's crazy because I used to go to a club called Bally High when I was like 11 years old with my uncle, do you know what I mean?
How you get there in there when you're
Well, my uncle was about it, you know what I mean? He was about it, man. So, you know what I mean? I got into a lot of places. I used to go to Jashaka when I was like 11, 12 years old, do you know what I mean? So I've been going to like clubs and like halls and stuff like that since I was like 10, 11, you know what I mean? and I used to like carry the speaker wires in when the sound system. They used to bring the sound systems in. They say, "Hey, hold the wires," and I used to bring the wires in and just.
There's loads of cables.
Yeah, you know, innit? So when they were stringing up the sound, I started bringing the wires in and just watch them and watch, you know what I mean, and wait till after the dance and I had to take the wires out again. So I was just.
Is it still like that? Loads of wires now?
Well, probably, you know what I mean? Probably, you know what I mean? Maybe it's a lot more digital now. It was very analog back then, do you know what I mean? And it was just part of my life. It's only as I've got older, I thought, that's kind of crazy, like being out at that young age, but it was just normal part of my life, you know?
For those that don't know what the sound system era was like, give us a quick description of it, please.
The sound system was like, you know, it was brought from the Caribbean. You know what I mean? Our parents and grandparents brought that sound from the Caribbean, and you know, people had their own sound systems with big speakers, and it was just part of our culture. Do you know what I mean? And it was brought from the West Indies here, and you had blues parties and stuff in the 70s. People had blues parties in their house, and they would charge people to get in, and it was a way of making money and for us as a West Indian community to come together at the weekends. And you know, people had their own bars and stuff like that, and a lot of sound systems, do you know what I mean, were made from that kind of background. Do you know what I mean? And then a lot of the sound systems went on to be really big sound systems, and then you know, the sound system culture produced people like myself who watched it and whose parents and uncles and that were involved in it. And then we became offshoots of that. Like, you might as well say that I done an article a few years ago with DJ Magazine called The Children of the Windrush Generation.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And there's people like myself, Norman J, a few others who were children of the Windrush generation that went into music and went on to influence dance music culture. But our parents and our family were from the Windrush generation who brought the sound system culture from the West Indies. And so, you know, we just continued it, you know what I mean?
And that just shows the evolution of how important music influences are, right?
Especially the sound system culture that came from the West Indies.
Yeah.
I believe that it is the backbone of everything that we see now.
True, because now we're going to talk about how, you know, you being at the forefront of like the movement of the jungle, house, acid rave scene. What was it like to be part of that movement? Because I know we just said now how that stems from sound system, but obviously you guys have influenced what come after that. But I want to know for specifically about that era. What was it like?
You know, it was, as I said before, I was always with like the guys from Soul to Soul and stuff. So I learned a lot from those guys. And then after the evolution of the rave scene, I was just right there at the beginning of it. And it wasn't just the music, it was like a whole revolution of society, because you had people from different backgrounds that you wouldn't necessarily know someone who was a socialite from Chelsea. But this rave scene brought everyone together, and it just broke down all the barriers of like, you know, where this
class, culture, all of that, yeah.
Everything got broken down.
Yeah.
And that's how this rave scene was. And it was a proper special time in terms of social identity and social backgrounds and all kinds of things.
I was going to say, was it a real mix of...
It was a real mixture of
people, backgrounds.
Of people, yeah.
Wow.
I remember once, I was like hanging out with Earl and the Marquis and stuff like that, because they all got involved in this thing. Do you know what I mean? And we all just got to know each other really well. And it was a beautiful time, because, you know, classes, everything got broken down and we just all became one.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about that. From that generation, a lot of people talk about that time and that era.
Yeah. It was special.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was special.
Can definitely imagine. So now we're talking about eras. What was life like growing up in Brixton, like the 70s, 80s? What was that like?
You know, it was very, very community based. And, you know, I grew up in Brixton, which is a proper West Indian culture. Do you know what I mean? So I grew up around, as I said, sound systems. There was a lot of crime, a lot of violence, but it was all love and a lot of unity. Do you know what I mean? So that's all I knew growing up was music, and you solve your problems with violence. Do you know what I mean? And so I just followed that. Do you know what I mean? Because that's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. If you had a problem, you solved it with violence. You know what I mean? I never solved anything by talking it out. That wasn't me. I was everything violence. That was it. And you know what I mean? It's, you know, later on you find out that it's not the way.
Yeah.
But at that time, that's all I knew, you know?
And so when you're growing up in that kind of environment, did you feel like there wasn't a way out, or was that just how life was? That's just how, the way it was going to be?
No, growing up in that environment, that's how life was. I didn't know anything else. I thought, there was a point, I thought all the black people in London lived in Brixton.
I hear you.
That's all I knew.
I hear you.
I was like, East London, I was like, East London, that's the National Front.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I'm not going over there. All I knew was Brixton. I had no interest in nowhere else. Everything was Brixton. It's only as you get older, you realise that there's other people, black people do live in East London. Do you know what I mean? I was scared to go over there. I was like, East London, NASA. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
But, you know, my whole life was in Brixton. And that was it. Brixton was a be-all and end-all, and that was it, nothing else. Do you know what I mean?
No, but that's relatable to times now, because you've got a lot of young people that don't leave their area.
I know.
They stick to their block. Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately, and they've escalated it with this whole postcode thing.
Exactly.
And it's so sad.
But it's just mad how that comparison's still relevant.
It's still relevant to today, because there was a time when I grew up in Brixton, we wouldn't go to Peckham.
Wow.
No way would I go to Peckham, because we'd get in trouble if we went down there. And unfortunately, it's still the same.
Yeah, similar.
Do you know what I mean?
And it must be just crazy looking back at that. Is actually how you were thinking.
We would never go to Peckham, and Peckham's just like...
It's down the road. Really.
Just up the road. Yeah. But I would like, go to Peckham, no chance, because I was Brixton, man, like you're mad. Yeah. Then go to Deptford, no way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So growing up, you know, around this in Brixton, and this was your kind of like lifestyle.
Yeah.
Obviously, you spent time in prison.
Yeah.
Is it because of this environment you're in and the people you're around?
You know, it's crazy, because the first time I actually went to prison was for something called sus, which is something called, and it was attempted theft of an unknown person. There was no person. There was no crime.
The law of sus.
The police at that time had this agenda to give as many black kids a criminal record as they could. And it's like in today's court, none of these cases would stand up. Do you know what I mean? I actually spent 4 months in detention centre for this. Do you know what I mean?
How old were you?
16.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
That's law of sus, innit? When they used to bring that out, that basically meant that anything, they could just suspect you of something with no evidence, no probable cause, and straight away
I got convicted of that. And unfortunately, my grandmother died thinking, because you know the older generation, they thought, well, if you got arrested, you must have done it. You know what I mean? My grandmother died thinking that I was guilty of it. Yeah. And in fact, I was just standing on the tube at Oxford Circus station, and the police come and said, "Oi, I saw that." I said, "Saw what?" "I saw you just try to put your hand in that woman's bag." I said, "What woman?" "She got on the train, she's gone." I got convicted of that. And I went to detention centre for it. That's the first time I went to jail.
And no evidence, no witness, no nothing.
Nothing. So I spent 4 months in Hollisley Bay for that. And
them times it was detention centre.
Detention centre, left, right.
I mean, you think, you know, nowadays it's still tough on crime, like for certain things. But I mean, that was an agenda. That was a proper agenda. Let's get as many young black boys a criminal record as we can.
Yeah.
Sad,
and that is what they've done.
For those that don't know, you can actually go and research this. There's documentaries made on it. There's studies that have been done on like sus and how that affected the Afro-Caribbean.
It was a proper agenda.
It's crazy.
So how many times did you go to prison?
3 times I was to prison. That was the first time. The other 2 times were like for violent crime.
So what age was the last time you went to prison?
The last time I went to prison was 30 years ago.
Okay.
30 years ago. I was in jail on firearms charges, possession of firearms and possession with intent.
How did all of this affect your outlook on life at that time?
At that time, I didn't really care. Do you know what I mean? Because at that time, you know, I would just be like, whatever, I'll just blaze after you, bruv. You know what I mean? I'd be like, what? I'm just gonna do what I'm doing. I remember once like shooting at someone 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Brixton High Road. I didn't care. I did not care.
Those were the times and ages, innit?
Yeah, I just didn't care.
Okay, corral.
I was like, what? 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right on the high street. Bam, I'm blasting. So what? You know what I mean? It's like, how crazy is that? Do you know what I'm saying?
How do you get to a point where that's normality?
It's just normal. And plus as well, you know, you got friends, all of you thinking the same. You're all carrying, you're all moving the same. You're all like that. You all got that mentality. Like one little thing, bam, you're gone. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so crazy. But it's that environment that you live in. And obviously, as I said, the police had an agenda. So, you know, it's us against them.
Yeah,
and what they do, they make you become that way. Do you know what I mean? Because of the way that they're dealing with us. They're the snatch squads. They just like drive up in their vans, come out and start beating you with like truncheons and stuff. And just like, you're just on the block. Do you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's the way you end up. Do you know what I mean?
So while all of this is going on, is the music stuff still going on?
Yeah, the music was in the background. Do you know what I mean? The music was in the background. I was fortunate enough to kind of, because I went to boarding school as well. I went to boarding school when I was like 12 years old. Do you know what I mean? My mum sent me away to boarding school. My mum was very smart. She was a social worker. She was the head of Area 5. So she just thought, you know what, this guy is, you know, if I don't get him out of this environment, he's going to kill someone or he's going to die. Do you know what I mean? And that was the bottom line of it. So I went to boarding school in Berkshire, in Newbury, and I was there until I was 16. And then when I came out, I kind of joined the gang. Do you know what I mean? And that's when I got caught up in the sus thing. So
was music the dream?
No, because music was always, I was always buying records and I was always into music, but I never looked at it as a way that I was going to get into it in that way. When I got to about 18, 19, then I kind of thought, you know what, I like this. Do you know what I mean? And I started hanging out with different people. And I started seeing a different way of life. I started kind of venturing into the West End and thinking, you know what, and meeting other people from East London, West London, and thinking, wow, you know, there are other people. And then I just got more into the music and I met up with my business partner, Brian G. Do you know what I mean? And he was like, oh, you need to stop that street life, man. You know what I mean? Because I had all these records. My uncles gave me like thousands of records. And he's like, man, you got all these records, you should come on the radio, do pirate radio. I was like, pirate radio, what's all that about? And he's like, man, you should come and do it. So he showed me, he actually brought me to his house and showed me how to do a radio show. Do you know what I mean?
Do you feel like these kind of people and these kind of conversations, I don't want to say like break the cycle, but that kind of feeling
it breaks the cycle because...
Did you feel like you were in that cycle though?
I was in a vicious cycle. Do you know what I mean?
Did help you break the cycle?
Yeah, it helps you break the cycle. You have to change your environment.
Yeah.
You have to change your environment. You have to change. If you don't change your environment, you will not change your mindset and your thinking because you'll always be in what my therapist calls an ADHD loop.
Okay.
Where you just hyper-focus on something and loop it over and over in your head and it's highly damaging to you. Do you know what I mean? Nothing good comes of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like you were building up these connections the whole time, really.
Yeah. So you meet, I was meeting different people, going to different places. Then I met up with the guys from Soul to Soul. I started going to African Centre every Sunday and just meeting
Everyone
different
talks
people.
about the African Centre.
My brother, it is the church.
Everyone talks about it. No,
It's the church.
everyone talks about it.
It's the church.
Yeah.
That's where I got my education.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? That's where I got my education, music, and just being more social and being more softer with my life and just being more tolerant and being able to interact with different people. Because up until that point, I was like, what?
Brixton Badman.
Just like, what? All the time. And then, you know, you soften and you start talking to people and you...
Also, music lifts your spirits,
it does,
doesn't
and
it,
you
anyway?
think, you know, I don't have to be so unkind. I don't have to be so hard. You don't have to be that way, you know what I mean? But until you change your environment and your thinking, that's the way you're going to be. That's all you know, you know?
We heard also that your logo for your record label was created, designed whilst you were in prison on...
I was in Brixton prison.
So the story's true, tell us.
I was in Brixton prison and I had this record, like an iconic record, Leviticus, The Burial.
Yeah.
Big, bad and heavy, right? And the record was just about to go out, but I was in prison, all right? And my business partner and I were on the phone and he said, we need a logo for it. So I said to him, and I was in the fours at the time, and I was on the phone and I was like, well, I want a Versace head with a black man's face on it. So I spoke to him about it and he's like, what? All right then. So he just kind of interpreted what I meant. When he come to see me, he had a couple of sketches.
That's so cool.
And I was like, yeah, this one. and then we used that as the record, as a logo for the record. But then we used
Was that on the sleeve? Was that actually
on the sleeve?
Sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after we used it for our actual record label, and it's there, still there now today.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
Crazy.
that's incredible.
Proof that you can make steps whilst you're inside.
Yeah, well, I was in jail and he was talking to me like, how are we going to put this together, man? I was
You got to
like,
be creative, right?
You have to be, man. And I was just like on the fours, like, yeah, well, boom, 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 you know what I mean? And it's crazy because I remember the last time I was in jail, they're like, I was like, what, you can make a phone call? They're like, yeah, man, you can get phone cards. I'm like, phone cards? Because when I was in jail before,
No phones.
there was no phones. There was 23-hour bang and that was it.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that was it. That was it. 23-hour bang up. There was no phone cards. There was none of that. When I was in jail when I was younger. Mad.
So jobs.
Well, when I was first when I was in DC, I worked in the kitchen at Hollisley Bay. Hollisley Bay was open. Do you know what I mean?
But that was more like military style, no? That
yeah,
kind of
detention
thing.
centre.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, I remember one time they said to me, listen, right, no talking, yeah? And I remember like, they said, all right, someone was talking, if one person done something, everyone had to pay. And so you're going to cut the grass. I had to cut the grass with a scissors, bro.
Mad.
That's wild.
And this
isn't
is
it?
like, this is like everyone out on the line. Everyone out on the line, here's your scissors, and it was cut the grass with a scissors, bruv.
Crazy.
And it's left, right, and you can't talk unless you have to ask. You couldn't talk. There's no talking unless you have to ask to talk. It's, oh, you can talk now. You get 10 minutes of talking time.
Wow.
And we talk. And then after, if anyone, and like, even when after your PE, you got like 1 minute, 1.5 minutes to be out of that shower, dressed on the line, in your kit, with your bib, ready for inspection. And if one person got it wrong, everyone pays.
Crazy.
It's crazy because that's not even that long ago, isn't it? Right? And
Detention centre, DC, man, is like crazy.
we got a long way to go, and that wasn't even that long ago. Frosty, you said before that a moment came where you had to do some self-reflection and work on the person or the man that you wanted to be.
Yeah.
When did that process start for you?
It started kind of late in life because I'd gone into the music and I kind of let go of the street life, but then I started getting into drugs. For about 20 years, I drank, took cocaine.
After prison?
I was after prison.
Yeah, okay.
And I was heavily into cocaine. Every weekend I was taking cocaine.
That's just because that's what the scene was like,
That's
right?
just what it was like. And I became a person I didn't really like. And I just started being a bit horrible to people. Because when you take drugs, it changes your personality. You're not very nice. Do you know what I mean?
You're not your real self, innit?
You're not yourself.
Yeah.
You're not yourself. You lose yourself in the drug. You start hanging out with people that you're not meant to, people that enable you. And it's a vicious cycle of unproductive things and bad decisions.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, literally, I'd say 2 years ago, up until that point, I was still doing it.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? I was working. I was a functioning addict.
Yeah.
So say two and a half years ago, 3 years ago, I decided that I've had enough of this. Do you know what I mean? And I went on a journey of self-reflection. I'd done 17 months of therapy with a therapist, and I went away to retreats and stuff like that. And I was determined to not look back. Do you know what I mean? And that's where my journey started. Up until that, I was making bad decisions. I wasn't a very nice guy.
So after you got out of prison, and you went into this kind of, music, and that was it. Did you feel like you had to change who you were, before that? Because did you like the person you were going into this new? Because prison was behind you now.
Prison was behind me, but I was still in prison in my head.
Okay.
Right.
You can still be on the road and still be in prison because the way your mindset and the way you think, you're not locked up, but you're still here in prison in your head because you're still making bad decisions. You're still hanging out with people.
And you're limiting yourself.
You're limiting yourself and you're limiting your possibilities because of your mindset and because of your capacity to just not be very nice. Do you know what I mean? So it takes a while. You have to change your environment. You have to change the way you think. You have to make decisions that are sometimes not easy. Do you know what I mean? And you have to self-reflect. Sometimes you have to face some hard truths about yourself. You have to look in the mirror and you have to face yourself, and you know what I mean, before you can change.
It was like there was probably no time for you to actually do any of that self-reflection because you're straight into the scene.
I was from the prison back out. Because I remember I came out of prison and I was out DJing the same weekend.
Because obviously your records dropped.
My records just dropped. It's one of the biggest records in the country.
It's gone mad. It's gone mad.
Yeah. And I've walked out straight into do you know what I mean? So it was non-stop. Do you know what I mean? And then I was off going around America, just going, you know what I mean? And there was no time for self-reflection whatsoever.
No time to process anything. Wow.
Do you mind talking us through the steps of, you know, that process for you and what it was like?
Yeah, for those that are listening, that they could probably take it away. What kind of practical steps?
Things had to go terribly wrong first. Before you could look at yourself, things have to go you have to hit rock bottom. And when I say rock bottom, I'm talking about just, I mean, I broke up, my relationship was in pieces. I was like letting people down, letting my kids down, letting my family down, saying, not being my true authentic self, integrity, none. Do you know what I mean? All these things you have to, and then after a while, when you've had enough of yourself and you think, I've had enough of myself, that's the only time you can change. Do you know what I mean? And I went through a time of deep regret, deep self-hate, self-loathing. Do you know what I mean? And that's when you have to start rebuilding your life. Do you know what I mean? Until then, you will make the same mistakes over and over. There's a saying, it says, we live life forward, but we understand it backwards.
I hear that.
Do you know what I mean?
I hear that, yeah.
And that is so true, you know what I mean? As people get older, they will realise that you live life forward, but you understand it backwards. So you have to reflect on your bad decisions, where you went wrong, where you can go right. And, you know, sometimes you got to make amends with people. Yeah. And there's all kind of different aspects to rebuilding yourself, and it's tough.
So you had to reach out to people?
Oh, I reached out to a lot of people. I had to reach out. I've done some really bad things to people, you know, in my life. Do you know what I mean? I've done some really bad things to people. Bad things have happened to me. And sometimes you got to just, you know, just accept, listen, it was my fault. Because when you're in that loop, everything's everyone else's fault. Nothing's your fault. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So sometimes you got to think, you know, this is my fault. You know, I wasn't too great then and I wasn't too great then. But you have to really look into yourself and be like, all right then. The amount of times I let my kids down, it's ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? Thank God I got a great relationship with them now. And they're actually really, really proud of me.
That's good to hear, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's important, you know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure that there are people out there who have let their kids down as well. And it's never too late to make amends and live a good, fulfilling life.
And then also reaching out to people, reaching out for help, right?
Yeah.
What kind of help did you, I know you touched on it, but can you just talk us through that process?
Well, you know, I'm really lucky that I've got some really supportive friends and family, do you know what I mean, that kind of understood. Because I never really grew up. I mean, when I left school, I was straight to the street and then I went straight into music. So I never had a normal kind of development like a 16-year-old, 15-year-old. Everything was at 100 miles an hour. Do you know what I mean? So I never had the chance to really grow up properly. I was just straight from boarding school to being a gang member to being a successful DJ, which is not normal. Do you know what I mean?
It's not.
It's not normal. Do you know what I mean? So I had no time to really reflect and be normal. I had no time for that. Nothing was ever normal in my life. Do you know what I mean? It was just from one extreme. Being in boarding school is an extreme. Then leaving boarding school and going straight into gang and doing really bad things is another extreme.
All extremes,
and then from there, becoming an international DJ is another extreme.
Yeah.
So there was nothing normal about
like
my
that.
life.
It's just all over.
There was nothing normal.
Yeah.
It's only now I can look back and reflect and think, damn, what a ride, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, what a ride, for real, man. For real. Like, you've spoken openly and honestly about, you know, struggles with addiction and mental health.
Yeah.
But how did you find your way through it?
Well, I suffered really badly from anxiety. Really badly. And I had a breakdown. I ended up in hospital for, I had to go to rehab. And then I had a bit of a mental breakdown. And then I had to go to therapy, sit with a therapist. And I think going to therapy changed my life. Do you know what I mean? Being honest and open, discovering your inner child again and doing all the work that you have to do. It's really tough because you have to ask really tough questions about yourself. Do you know what I mean? And your part in your suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Accountability.
What is your part in your suffering? Yeah? Forget everyone else.
What have you done? Yeah.
What have you done?
Yeah.
So it's difficult, but it started there for me. And at first it was tough. Do you know what I mean? But I found that the more I got into being in therapy, the more clear things came. Do you know what I mean? And I started finding the tools. And the thing about it, you find out why you do things.
Yeah.
Why did I take drugs? Not, you know what I mean? You can't heal something unless you find out why you done it in the first place. Yeah? So childhood traumas, other things came up that you have to fight, and you think these are the triggers why I done this, so why did I behave that way? And you find out these things. And I highly recommend everyone to do therapy. I really do. I know there's a bit of a stigma around it and people think, but it is so helpful. It can change it. It changed my life. It changed my life, man. Do you know what I mean?
I think another thing that people struggle with a lot when coming to therapy is where and who and how. Like, how did you find the right therapist for you?
I went to my GP first, and I was really lucky to have a really good friend who introduced me to a therapist who worked with people in the music.
Okay.
Yeah. And first of all, I done hypnotherapy, which I found really helpful. Hypnotherapy. At first I was like, what, are you going to hypnotize me, yeah? Right. That's not going to work. Off you go to sleep.
Really?
Yeah.
Mad.
And
I'm scared of that still.
I was like, really? And he's like, well, I talk to you and I was kind of talk to you and subconsciously fix things while you're asleep. I'm like, really? Okay. That was helpful. Do you know what I mean? But such was my trauma, I needed more than that. So after that, I had a couple of therapists, and you have to go through a couple to find the right fit for you, because not everything's going to fit for you. So I went through 2 or 3, right, until I found the right one. And then I done that for 17 months. And it was just, as I said, it changed my life.
Wow. I think it's important for people to hear that, you know, sometimes we have to go through a few to find
you have to,
the right
because
one.
sometimes, and you might think, oh, this ain't for me, and it might put you off it, but stick with it. Try and find someone else that's more suited to you, that might help you with your particular needs. You know what I mean?
That one's in the memory bank for me.
Yeah, it's important, because you're not always, it's very, very rare you'll get it right the first time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You have to try a few, and you might think, it might really put you off, and you think, what's all this about? Do you know what I mean? But stick with it and try a few, and you'll find one that's good for you, you know?
What kind of impact have you had, like, since you've been open and sharing about, you know, your struggles with mental health and addiction? What impact has that had on, like, the people around you?
It's, you know,
your fan base.
The amount of people that have come to me, both in person and online, and just been so grateful for the way that I'm just open about things. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously people just think, well, if you can go through it and be so open about it, then maybe I can talk to people as well. And some people that I didn't know, that someone like you would be able, that would go through stuff like this. Thank you so much. And especially online, I get a lot of people online. And my being open and my journey has led me to become a suicide prevention and mental health first aider.
Wow.
This is incredible.
With a fantastic organisation called Are Hummingbird. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I get involved with them as much as I can, and try to help people. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not an expert. So when people come to me, I can always send them to the right place that's a good fit for them.
Oh, because I wanted to ask, obviously that's the impact on people around you and your fan base, but what has that impact of you being open had on your healing as well?
Well, you know, it helps me to heal, because it gives me my own self-gratification. It makes me feel like I've done something. And I notice that I'm softer in myself, and I'm softer with other people, and people can get on better with. There are people before that you say, I was scared to talk to you before, but now you're really easy to talk to, and and it's nice. You know what I mean?
I had that in the barbershop a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, there was a kid that was like, sitting in the chair. Yeah, and my barber was saying, "This man's changed, because he's got a little poster of life after prison on the wall." Yeah, and then the guy in the chair was like, "Yeah, bruv, he's right. Because when I was younger, I was scared to chat to you.
Yeah,
but now you're nice. You're cool."
I'm not gonna lie, I've had it as well.
You had it as well?
Of like people at school.
Isn't it a beautiful
And I see
thing?
them now and they're like, oh my God, I talk to them like, and I can't believe I never did like that. And I used to be like
and
that.
And the thing about it as well, you seem to think, what? Why couldn't you come and talk to me?
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Or
You're
like
scary.
you don't realise
really?
what the effect
Do
you
you
had
understand?
on people.
And it's just beautiful now
Yeah.
that people can approach you in that way, and it makes you feel better. It makes you feel that the work you've done in yourself and the development you've done in yourself has all been worth it. And it's not everyone is willing to change and not willing to embrace
change as well. Yeah,
people are not willing to do it.
No, for real.
A lot of positive effects you're having on people through not even just music now, just through everything else.
Just good vibrations, man.
That's
good
right.
vibrations.
Just good vibes.
Good vibrations, man.
So over the years, things have changed a lot through music, through culture, and the conversation about mental health has changed massively as well. How have you adapted and grown with that change?
What all I've done is because I'll tell you something, it's crazy because I've got a book, written my autobiography, I don't know if you know, called Big Bad and Heavy.
It's only right, it's called that as well.
It's only right.
It's called that, yeah.
And in that book, I obviously had a ghostwriter. I didn't write it. I had a ghostwriter. I spoke to on the phone for a couple of hours every day. And when I first went through the process, I was like, well, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk about certain things. I'm not going to go into this and that. But when you start getting into the process, you start becoming really involved. And Andrew, who actually wrote it, is an expert at extracting information out of you. And so I really got engrossed in the process, and I just became honest about it. And I was quite nervous at first when the book came out, because I was like, I just reveal it all. Do you know what I mean? I was quite nervous in the beginning about how it would be received. But people were just like, wow. I was so happy, and I got so much out of your book. And I think that the response I had from people about the mental health aspect and stuff gave me the most fulfillment out of everything.
Wow.
And there's so much, I've achieved so much in my life, but just the response from people about that aspect of my life gives me a lot of pleasure. Do you know what I mean? And I think that made me relax more and be able to just be more open about it, because it was almost by accident that I just started speaking about it in this book. Do you know what I mean? And as I said, I was quite nervous about it. I thought, oh my God, should I take that bit out and all that? And everyone was like, my mum at the time was like, no, leave it. Do you know what I mean? God rest in peace, Ma. Do you know what I mean?
Rest in peace, man.
And and that is how it started from there, really. Do you know what I mean? And then people read it, and then people started getting me involved in doing talks and doing like other things. And I saw people getting so much out of it that I just, it just became part of me, and it just warmed my heart to see how much of a good effect it had on people. Because I had people from all walks of life and everything come to me and ask me things, and if I can help, I can point you in the right direction and stuff like that. It gives me a lot of joy, and it makes me feel like some of the things I've done in my life, maybe I'm,
and you're doing some good.
I'm doing some good to kind of make up for the absolute horror I was. You know what I mean?
Well, we were wondering if there was a part 2 coming soon.
Yes, there is, as it goes. I've just literally signed up for it.
Come on.
Oh, come on.
I've just signed up for it not too long ago. So we're going to start that process real soon.
Amazing.
Yeah.
If you could speak to your younger self, what would you say to him?
I would say to my younger self, stay away from drugs.
No, straight.
Stay away from drugs, stay away from the streets, and try to be kind to yourself and don't be too hard on yourself. That's what I'd say. Because I'm of the belief that you have to walk the walk. Do you know what I mean? If I was to erase anything from my life, I'd be erasing myself. Do you know what I mean? And I'm fortunate enough that I've come out the other end a much better person. Not everyone will. Do you know what I mean? So I'd like people to look at my story and look at people like me and try to look at where I went wrong and go the other way. Do you know what I mean? Look and say, well, he went wrong there. Maybe I won't take that road. Do you know what I mean? So I hope that people can get something out of that.
No, facts. It sounds so simple, but it's true, innit? Just stay away from them things.
Stay away from those things.
Yeah, man.
Do you know what I mean?
Appreciate
Stay
it.
away from people that will lead you down the wrong road. Do you know what I mean? And all that glitters is not gold.
Big facts.
Thank
Big
you.
facts. Thank you. Thank you, Frosty. I
No
appreciate
problem,
that.
man. Thank you for having me,
No,
man.
it's all good, man. What we do on Life After Prison as well is we like to shout out or spotlight organisations that can support people either in prison or in their life after prison journey. I wanted to ask you if there's any organisation you wanted to shine a light on.
Well, I'd like to, shine a light on We Are Hummingbird, who are a mental health and suicide prevention organisation. Also, a fantastic organisation called Boys Get Sad Too.
Oh, sounds good.
Boys Get Sad Too. If you look online, you can find their T-shirts and hoodies. They donate 15% of all profits into men's mental health charities.
Dope.
And now I've said that, you might walk around and see people wearing these T-shirts.
I'm going to get mine.
Because I've never heard of
Boys
that
Get Sad
organisation
Too.
before.
It's a great organisation. Do you know what I mean? And they do a lot of good stuff for men, because men need to talk more about their mental health. And this organisation is real good. And you can say it through the clothing.
Dope.
Boys Get Sad
I'm going to
Too.
get my own still.
Yeah.
I'll tag you in it when I get it as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. I'm just going to spotlight two more. Another organisation I'm going to spotlight. The first one is We Are With You, who offer support for people with substance misuse issues, mental health struggles. They provide tailored support and treatment for people looking to recover and lead healthier lives. So that's We Are With You. Second one I'm going to shout out is Mind, a leading mental health charity in the UK. They provide information, support and resources for anyone experiencing mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, addiction, and recovery from trauma. So check that out if they can support you.
And we love including your experiences in our conversations. So we asked you, what's something you've learned about yourself since leaving prison that surprised you? And we had, I am more resilient and patient than I was before my time inside.
Makes sense, innit?
What I once considered normal is now massive. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like a tea. Like
I
a
love
cup
that.
of coffee.
I love that.
A walk in the park.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And I learned how to be happy within myself and don't need to have expensive things to feed my
I
self-worth.
love that.
That's a good one.
Love
Big
that.
up
Really
yourself.
good one.
Big up.
guys.
I love that.
Thank you so much for sending that in. And please keep getting involved when we fire out questions on our socials and, ask you guys questions.
Yeah, continue to get involved in the conversation and get in touch in general. You can do this by DMing us on Instagram and X at After Prison Pod. At TikTok, we are Life After Prison Pod. Yeah, boom, just double checking. And if you're listening on the inside, we can also provide the number at the end of the episode. But if you wanted to email us, you can email us at podcast@prison.radio.
Jumpin Jack Frost, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure,
And I really
for
enjoyed it. And I hope that people get a lot out of it. And, remember, life is beautiful. And, you might be sitting down now, but, you can turn your life around and you can become great.
Facts.
We know people are going to take something from this conversation, and we get a lot of people, writing into us and speaking to us, thanking us for these kind of shows. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And of course, thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.